Welcome to Sparks of History. Joining us today is renowned filmmaker and producer Grant de Graf, director of both the Legacy Project and of Frontline Voice. Mr. de Graf, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Ari. Pleasure to be here, and thank you for reaching out.
Okay. As one who has devoted his efforts and his talents to promoting Holocaust education and to combating anti-Semitism through films and the media, how do you view the situation today, given the extreme rise of anti-Semitism worldwide? And how do you deal with the fact that terms such as Holocaust, genocide are being thrown out today? Further, does Holocaust education actually stem anti-Semitism? Is that still the case? And it's all yours. Those are just a few of the questions I thought that might be appropriate. If there's anything else, please feel free to address that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the question. So, as you articulated, my focus was previously on filmmaking, and still is. But just given the anti-Semitism in the world and the sharp increase, which obviously was realized a few years ago, it's a rising trend. It's not something which just suddenly happened. I believed, and as many do, that Holocaust education is a very important criteria to educate the world and to hopefully reduce the amount of anti-Semitism that exists in the world. And we just have to look at the trend, the very sharp rise in ignorance across the globe, in America and in Europe. Individuals who just didn't even know that the Holocaust existed. And so from my perspective and many others, we believe that it was very important to educate people as much as possible on the Holocaust, on the events, and exactly what happened. And so, that really was the spark to my Legacy project, which is basically committed to hosting conferences in 27 countries in Europe and also in America at a later stage to inform people about the Holocaust. The atrocities of October the 7th were just, there is no word to describe it. I mean, it was just, we were just, everyone, the whole world, to a large extent, were just swept off their feet. And certainly those in Israel, anyone who has a connection with Israel, were just taken back in a very significant way. And it sort of brought to light in many ways the importance or the very dire situation of anti-Semitism and how much more work is needed, for individuals across the globe, people who have any interest in combating hate and anti-Semitism, to be ambassadors to the very difficult situation. Just on October the 7th, I do want to just mention that prior to October the 7th, especially in Israel, there obviously was, I would say, to some extent, a divided nation, especially with the legislative initiatives which were being conducted. And there were demonstrations. After October the 7th, that dissipated completely. There was a new Israel, a new spirit of unity in the air. And it's very difficult to describe because especially in the South, or where the fighting actually was taking place, it was just incredible to experience this and see it in action. Obviously further away you got from there, things might have been slightly diluted, but the unity and the spirit was just incredible. And that was, to me, very inspiring. When you saw the whole of Klal Yisrael, the whole of Jewish people all across the globe even came together for a common cause. So that was very inspiring. In addition to that, I want to just briefly mention, on October the 7th, the incredible miracles, open miracles, which happened. For example, there was a helicopter carrying 60 IDF soldiers on that day that actually crashed, were shot down by Hamas terrorists. And all 60 of those IDF soldiers, including the crew members, managed to escape. And, you know, when you have a look at the helicopter, pictures of the helicopter, which is basically non-existent, it's just mind-boggling in terms of how, you know, how they manifested themselves. And there are hundreds of other stories that are coming out all the time of how people were just, the bravery and the courage that people showed was just incredible. So, you know, we have a lot of work to do, just in terms of, you know, genocide. I mean, you know, it's obviously very media portrays the situation in a way which is just not reflective. And that's really what's in many ways just because of the information war which Iran is conducting, which prompted me to initiate the Frontline voice platform, which is to portray information on the war and on the situation in a more accurate way that is being portrayed by the media. The way is that the media are presenting it is very, very disturbing. You know, there obviously are terms that are being thrown around like occupation, like apartheid. Don't forget, I grew up in an apartheid South Africa. I know what apartheid is. And Israel can't be further. I fought apartheid. I actually, you know, I was involved with that whole fight. And to come here and hear people saying that Israel is a apartheid state is just, you know, I just don't understand it. It's just, you know, that is basically anti-Semitism in the most aggressive and most terrible way. So there is a lot of work to be done. I want to just mention as well that, you know, obviously the war itself is tragic. No one can deny that. The death of human beings on both sides of the fence. If you can't actually feel some type of pain, then, you know, you obviously, the person has lost their moral compass. But, you know, the IDF is very specific in terms of the way that they conducted this war. I mean, obviously they appreciated that there would be comeback. I mean, because Israel, unfortunately, is the only country in the world that is not allowed to win a war. But they are very specific in the way that the war is conducted. And, for example, as many people do know, there were, you know, millions of leaflets that were distributed asking civilians to move to the south. There were phone calls that were made, text messages on people's cell phones, thousands, tens of thousands of those messages, warning people that there is going to be there's going to be a bombing, that the situation is going to come under fire. And, you know, unfortunately, or, you know, we don't really know if it was the case, but presumably many ignored those messages and were caught up in the fire. But there was certainly enough warning given, and people were begging, the IDF were begging people, please go south to safe areas, leave your house. So as far as I'm concerned, as far as I can see, that IDF war was conducted in the most moral way possible. I mean, there is no army that would actually do that. In addition to that, when it comes to aircraft, IDF aircraft bombing the area, those are specifically targeted. I mean, there's a legal team behind that that actually look at, you know, which targets they can take, which they can't. It's a very specific. There are legal experts in the IDF who are looking at all the targets that are presented to the pilots. And it's not just like, okay, well, today's another day, we're going to, you know, destroy buildings. That's not how it works. So all I can say is that the IDF has to be one of the most moral armies in the world, despite the media. And so all I can say is, you know, and I have friends that I grew up in South Africa who were some of my best friends. And when it came to the Israel-Hamas war, they turned around to me and said, you know, well, you know, there's always two sides to a story. And, you know, as one politician said, no, there's no two sides to a story. One person says it's raining, and the other person says it's not raining. You look out the window and you see whether it's raining. You just have to check the facts. anyone who decides to stay on the sidelines in this tragic event, which has implications globally. It's not just a local issue. It's a global phenomenon. It's going to be, it's international. Anyone who stays on the sidelines is complicit in the terrorism, in the tragedy which has been perpetrated, and it's really shocking. But I'm hoping that that this will ignite a feeling or an understanding that there is a need for education, for appreciating that that anti-Semitism is real. When you look at the campuses in the United States, I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, it's just unbelievable what's happening there. And in fact, Dumisani Washington, who's a black pro-Israel advocate, has said many times that the warning signs were seen about 4 or 5 years ago. Obviously, we do know that a lot of work has to be done in terms of affecting and educating people in terms of what the real situation is on the ground in Israel.
Just tell us a little bit more about Frontline.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Just a little bit more about Frontline Voice. This is a new platform that you set up that's an advocacy platform on social media.
Yes, well, Iran, as you know, is spending billions of dollars on the information war. And that's really something that I'm involved with. I'm involved in a war, in a different type of war. It's an information war. And that is really to change and capture the minds of young people and to push them in a direction which is not only inconsistent with the reality of things and how things really are, and portray Israel in a negative light, but they are really capturing the minds of these people, and almost these are unfortunately the terrorists of tomorrow. These people that buy in to the Iran and Hamas propaganda. And once again, I'm not anti-Palestinian. I'm not, as I say, I fought apartheid. I take every individual as an equal person. So it's unfortunate that what Hamas and Iran have done is they've captured the hearts and minds of these young students, of these people who are obviously very impressionable, and they've moved them in a direction which really is like building the future terrorists of tomorrow. And our platform, Frontline Voice, is really to bring to the attention of the public and the world that there are certain issues that are incorrectly projected in the media. Some of them are just basically stereotypes, like occupation, like apartheid. And I encourage every person, every Jewish person who's really an ambassador, to find out about the facts and be an ambassador really for Israel in terms of what really is happening. So that's really the Frontline Voice, is really to change the narrative to a narrative which really is actually more factually and correct than the one rather than it's been projected by the BBC and some of these other media outlets, and also on social media as well. I mean, it's pretty prevalent there, unfortunately, on TikTok and Instagram, wherever you turn your head. There are initiatives, there are campaigns that have been actively run by pro-Hamas propagandists to change and to capture the hearts of mind people. And obviously Frontline Voice is doing whatever it can to take on that challenge.
How can regular people be ambassadors? If someone is not social media savvy and doesn't know all that kind of stuff, and they just want to help get the word out, advocate, how do they do that?
Well, first of all, I think obviously what's important is coming to terms with all the facts, like knowing and reading out about all the facts and as they exist. Just like this word genocide is being thrown around. I mean, people need to know what the strategy of the IDF and how carefully just back. For example, we had that disastrous report about the hospital in Gaza being bombed by IDF, and that there were 500 civilian deaths, which obviously wasn't the case at all. It turned out to be not the case. In fact, it was it was fired by pro-Hamas activists, and they were responsible for it. So the first thing is for people and individuals out there to educate themselves on the facts, all the things that are being said negatively about Israel. And once they've come to an understanding or some type of level of basic education on those issues, to reach out to their legislators, to reach out to community members and leaders in the community, to basically put Israel's perspective and point of view forward, which obviously isn't being done enough. So everyone can be an ambassador. You don't only have to be social media savvy. I mean, obviously there are a lot of Gen Z people out there who are, and they can definitely be ambassadors for Israel. But even people who aren't connected to social media, they can, they have their circle of friends, they know people, and they can put forward in an educated way the Israel perspective as it really is. I mean, which anyone knowing the facts and issues can see that it's a very legitimate, very factual way of actually presenting, a very just way of presenting the issues which need to be presented and putting them on the table.
Again, this has been, thank you so much for this presentation. We urge all our viewers and listeners to go online and check out Frontline Voice and support it, like it, share it, whatever one does on social media, and also to check out the Legacy Project. And I'm assuming that, God willing, when the war is won, both the military war and the information war, that you will be continuing to do what you do so well, and perhaps produce films and other multimedia projects after the war. Is that on the agenda?
Absolutely. There's even more so than now than ever before. There's a need, Holocaust education and anti-Semitism. We need to do a tremendous amount of work in that area, and I would have preferred not to do it, but that's something that I'm really committed towards achieving, and I very much appreciate you hosting me and for me being able to put on the table a different perspective, or perspective from the front lines, to people out there who may not be so well informed.
Okay, again, thank you so much. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you.